Hello, everybody. I'm just waiting for Ken West to join. So just hang tight. I'm sure he's coming soon. We just did a test run, so I know this works. I know we have this down. Hope everyone's doing well on this freezing cold night. And I think it's freezing wherever you are in this country. So I hope you're staying warm. Ken, where are you? Hang tight, people. All right, here he comes. Hello, Ken. Oh, no. I think everything's just delayed after 5 o'clock. All right, Ken has to join. We did so well at 5:30. Yay. So close. Hello.
Hello.
We did it.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
We triumphed over technology.
Dude, we are so young.
You can say that.
I am saying that. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. It's moving along. Just, as we said last week, right? Like surviving the soft coup. It's all go. I mean, I know we don't have maximum velocity here yet, but I just want to say, like, your line, there's a lot of trauma ahead, but it's survivable. Like,
Yeah.
totally embroidering that as a sampler and putting it up on my office wall. And that's going to be my mantra.
Yeah. Get your boots laced.
So I'm going to start because it's 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
People will trickle in, and I'm going to mention it a bunch of times, but I just want to say hi. I'm Jen Sudol-Edwards, the Chief Curator and Curator of Contemporary Art at the Mint Museum. Thank you so much, young affiliates of the Mint, for hosting the studio visit tonight, and for introducing the Mint Museum to Ken West last fall when he was included in the Mint Museum's The Yams Coined in the South show with this stunning photograph, Black Boys Cry. It was one of 2 photographs that Ken had in the show. And the Mint Museum has been very fortunate to be able to buy that photograph thanks to the Charlotte Debutante Club. And so it's now hanging in our galleries right now as we speak. And it's become one of our most beloved images. It's also hanging on the front of the building in our banner announcing that we are open. So you have really come to be one of our most beloved images in just a year. So
That's awesome.
okay, yeah. But we're actually here also to celebrate your new book, which just came out, The Beauty of Everyday Things. Yay! Documentary portraits of mindfulness and Black revolutionary normalcy. And it's a beautiful book. I mean, in so many ways. Like as I told you this week, like it's beautifully produced. Everything about it, like the page texture, the size, the reproduction of the images, but just like the images themselves are just so stunning. I mean, and it really is just like the total normalcy of everyday life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just like these beautiful images of Black people just living around the world. And so it's totally a range also of like real heartbreaking poignancy and just loveliness.
Yeah.
So extraordinary work. Thank you for doing it.
Appreciate it, Jen.
Yeah. So, how do you feel now that it's done? I mean, you've been working on this for 13 years.
It's the mind that produces the art and the mind that has to sort of like introduce people to the compilation are two totally different parts of the brain, right?
Oh.
So I think the big part for me has been just sort of shifting from, person who's just being open to creating a lot of the stuff and moving into the mind of explaining and just
So sorry.
come up with an appropriate introduction to people who may be unfamiliar with the work, you know?
Mm-hmm. So was it hard to distill the last 13 years into, because I mean, there are a lot of images in here. It's a thick book, but
Yeah.
it's not overwhelming. So you had to have been really like careful about your editorial choices.
Yeah, I think so. There was like 20,000 images,
Oh my God.
and just the editorial process, I really got stuck at a point and was about to sort of, push pause.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was introduced to the former editor of Life magazine.
Who was that?
What's that?
What's the name?
Oh, his name is Bill Shapiro.
Uh-huh.
And he's basically, man, he just lent his time to do an edit. We had several editorial sessions, and he shared with me what was working, what was not working, what could have, needed to be bigger, smaller, pairings and stuff like that. And it was just extremely helpful. And he really did get me through a very difficult time in producing the final piece.
Mm-hmm. So you started photographing the images in this book in 2007.
Yep.
And then the last one was July 4th, 2020.
July 4th. Yep. 8:30
So,
8:30 a.m. July 4th.
oh my God. So actually, like, I'll ask you about that. Like, how much is the time and place significant to the work? Because I mean, part of the beauty of the images is that they are kind of timeless. I mean, even a lot of the clothing, like, it's not necessarily a marker of, oh, well, that was in style in,
Yeah.
2014. I remember that shade of fuchsia. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that specific. So is that something that why do you hold on to those dates and times?
Well, I mean, the only date that I'm actually conscious of is the conclusion.
Okay.
I'm conscious of the year that I started, because that was the year that a friend of mine, a gentleman, Christopher Logan, Loganic, who's a painter, moved from, he was my first New York housemate. That was the year that he moved from New York, from Brooklyn to Berlin. And I helped him sort of break down all of his stuff and move into like his, transitional mode, right?
Uh-huh.
But after that, the only one that I actually keep track of is the one that I took on at 8:30 on July 4th, 2020.
So you have lived all over the world. You grew up in Tennessee, but then you spent time in Ohio for school. You spent time in New York City for school. You spent a time in Paris on a fellowship.
Yep.
You're in Atlanta now. So you photographed all over the world and very different cultures.
Yeah.
And so how has that both informed the work and also kind of attracted you to the images that you then keep, right? Because if you make 20,000 images, like, certainly not all of them are in here, but then I'm sure, like, I'm assuming, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I'm assuming that you don't keep all of them in your head either. Like, some don't make it into the ether. or
Yeah.
the annals of history. So how do you think about your images located in certain spaces, and what makes it important?
I think the thing that's important for me is to sort of localize and
Hmm.
compartmentalize. I don't, when we start talking about mindfulness, we start talking about attachment and not being attached to things.
Hmm.
The one of the introductory sort of uh, narrative parts of the book is this whole conversation around wabi sabi
Hmm.
and this notion that things are always changing and nothing is ever complete,
Hmm.
and we're never in a position where we can say we're finished with something. And I think that's the spirit of the book,
Hmm.
is that the intention is to really present people as, all of us are in process. We're not who we're going to be, and we're not who we were.
Hmm.
And I think it's super important for us to really recognize that, and to pay attention to that when it's time to sort of, interact with one another.
Hmm. And that's, I mean, as I was saying, like, it really just feel like there's a timelessness in the book. And
Yeah.
so you did it. You captured wabi sabi in your photographs. It's amazing, Ken. But that's true. Like, it does come across in the images. But then, so like this cultural location, though, I mean, because this is a survey of Black life, right? Like, it's all over. I mean, I want to say geographically because I don't want to locate it in a place, but it's the beach, it's the city, it's the yard, it's the home. It's all of these different places.
Yeah.
But because you've lived in so many different places and experienced so many different types of cultures,
Yeah.
how is that something that kind of guides what you're photographing?
I think if anything, it's this unintentional consequence of recognizing that we're all the same.
Hmm.
And that in spite of the narrative that gets spun up through popular culture, there's some foundational pieces that keep us all consistent. There's a thread that ties us all together, right?
Hmm.
And I think that my biggest challenge has been just to be aware and to be open to seeing, the beauty that's right there in front of me.
Hmm.
You know?
So your approach is the same no matter where you are when you're
Oh yeah,
taking a picture.
it doesn't
Hmm.
matter. I don't switch it up. Although some places are much more difficult to sort of be attentive.
Uh-huh.
Big part of that is going to be like, starting in New York City, there's so many distractions and so many other priorities, especially if you live there. It's
Hmm.
different as a visitor, but as a resident, it's sort of like, especially now, there's so many different things going on, and it's much more difficult. But as a visitor, it's easier to photograph a city like New York or Paris when you don't have to worry about like paying your rent and doing all kinds of like fundamental things, right? So I think that was very helpful in terms of like creating the appropriate mental space to
Hmm.
approach a project like that.
And how do you approach your subjects? I mean, is there ever a time when you take a picture and you don't engage with who you're photographing?
Sometimes, yeah.
There is.
Sometimes if it's just something that if I see a situation and the lighting is just perfect,
Hmm.
then I'll go ahead and take it. Um, Otherwise, I'll see a person who is, just interesting, and I'll start a conversation. Um, and I think a big part of that has been super helpful because it's helped me
Hmm.
to really understand who I'm photographing, which is kind of essential. Could I show you one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let me hold on 1 second.
Okay. Oh no, now I have to fill. Oh, yay! Because I love that photograph. Oh my God, it's huge. It looks so different in large format. Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful image.
Like,
Ugh.
this just, I mean, I saw this gentleman, this brother just walking down the street, and I was like, he's got a baby in his hands. Like, what would mainstream America expecting him to not have in his hand? A baby. And not just not his daughter, and he's showing her so much like authentic love and appreciation and respect and offering protection for her. It's one of those images that I thought it's super important to see, because if we start talking about perception and knee-jerk reactions, and if I'm a person like a police officer who has to sort of just call to the scene and ask to address a person who looks like this guy without the baby, my perception is completely different. And that's a big part of what I strive to do with the images, is to jar that initial perception. We said we weren't going to delve into the Kahneman stuff, the system 1, system 2 thinking.
I'm just not ready. I haven't read the book. It's right. Look at this. I mean, I did get it. I wanted to be on point, but like, look at this book.
Oh yeah,
it's
that is a gem. Like I emailed him out of the blue after I finished it, and I was like,
really?
We had like a 4-week back and forth about perception and knee-jerk reactions and stuff like that, and if the person who's making them is redeemable or whatever. Part 2, but the bottom line
but sum it up. Like, so sum up his theory, since I can't help at all.
Okay, so Kahneman is basically like the human mind functions with system 1 and system 2 thinking, right? System 1 is that the things that you innately know, like by gut. Like when you walk into a room and your significant other is in there and they're upset with you, but they haven't said a word, you know it, right? It's a facial expression, it's the body posture, it's the, whatever cues you're accustomed to. And system 2 is if I ask you, what's 2 plus 2? You sort of logically sort of figure it out. And what I'm really obsessed with is this notion of synthesizing the two. What happens when I tickle that thing in your mind that's all about like immediate understanding of a situation versus what's really going on, like looking onto a thing versus looking into a thing.
And I just want to say, because someone asked, so the name of the book again is Thinking Fast and Slow. Daniel Kahneman, who won the Pulitzer Prize for economy. So this exposes some of your educational background. So you started off in undergrad as a communications and a psychology major. So you already have this curiosity about figuring out how people are communicating with each other and how to best you communicate to other people, but then the psychological functioning of your audience or your viewer or your subject is something that from the get-go is something that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
So when you went to school, I guess I'm trying to think of how to ask this most directly. What did your thinking start off as, and how has it evolved over time? And that's not just because you've now been educated and you've been thinking about this a lot and you've gone through, master's and graduate school and fellowships, but also because like you're older, you've experienced, like history in all of its complicated, abusive forms. And so like, it may have been this idealist at 18, that I'm going to learn and master the systems and then use them to my advantage for good. I'm not saying it wasn't going to be for good, but like then you realize like how things are stacked up against all of us, but especially a Black man. And so now, like, how has that? How did it start, and where has it gone to?
Wow. I think a lot of the earlier work really started, like most people, as being attempting to be very provocative and shocking and sort of literal.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I think where I am now is I enjoy watching people sort of struggle to find their own meaning in each piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important to me because ultimately that's what it's all about. I can't tell you this is about masculinity and this is about, you know, oppression and all the white supremacy, all these things that we, you know, hear on a regular basis. But true evolution, in my experience, it comes from, you know, personal revelation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't get Malcolm X to El Hajj Malik El Shabazz until you have a revelation. You know what I mean? You don't get, you know, certain shifts in mentality are required in order to bring about elevation. And I think there's a real lack of catalyst in that regard for most people because, you know, I started, you know, doing like a lot of advertising stuff, a lot of, you know, other type of technical stuff. And the whole purpose and intention behind those types of projects is to get people to instantly recognize what a thing is.
Mm-hmm. And to want it.
Take the appropriate action.
Mm-hmm.
If someone has to think about it, then we consider that a fail. And so,
oh my God, it's so messed up.
Right.
It's so messed up.
So if it's really kind of grotesque if you think about it. Like if people are thinking, then we as designers and advertisers have failed in our mission to getting people to just click. We just want people to click the button. This guy's thinking, oh my God, how do we get him to not think and just click?
Just click.
So now we got a deeper issue culturally as Americans and as a society that we're in action. And I think that's the big thing. It's like this whole ready, fire, aim culture. And I think one of the big things I consider as my personal mission as a creative is to redefine that as much as I can and not to come or approach the work with a predisposed intention, but to just capture reality and let the audience decide for themselves and interpret for themselves what it means. You know, if someone goes off the rails in an entirely different direction, I'm there to sort of offer a suggestion or at least my input. But I don't, you know, I'm kind of agnostic, which is kind of ironic for a lot of artists. They want you to sort of really get what they mean. But I think in my mind, I know what it means for me. But I recognize that people didn't grow up where I grew up. They don't understand the world through my lens. And, you know, I just find it interesting. It's almost like each image is like a Rorschach test. And there's no specified definition of the work. It sort of all depends on which perspective or what your origin is as to how you interpret it.
Well, and that's why there's a gentleness to your images. I mean, you're not creating you have a project, you know, like you very specifically have a project and it's there in that subtitle, you know, this normalizing of Black life through these photographs.
Yeah.
But they're not didactic in the way that you're, not that you're describing, but like everything that would be, if they were heavy-handed or if you were trying to get this like larger, heavier message across and being really like trying to force your viewer into taking a position or coming to some, like, it's not there. I mean, that's very much true.
Yeah.
ask you though about something you said with, and this is kind of off topic, but I'm interested in your answer. So you said, people now are very much just responding to things. Like you have this willing audience. And one of the things that I always wonder about is it true that people have changed, or is it that the tools that are being used in front of people have changed? And so this mentality of, not necessarily being so critical in what we see or what we're experiencing or what we're doing, because just as an animal, we're not immediately that critical. But because technology is this tool that has evolved in the hands of very specific people who do things like get degrees in that technology along with psychology degrees,
Yeah.
so they know how to use it in the right way. Like, it's possible that in a couple of decades or generations, as people become more savvy as to how this technology is being used, that in fact people, the masses, will catch up with the technology and be more savvy about what's being presented and maybe think before they click.
Unfortunately,
No.
I think that's kind of an optimistic perspective.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Right, because when we as technologists sit around a table and evaluate the success or failure of a software product,
Mm-hmm.
we tie a lot into biology and psychology. So there are a lot of things that get presented to us in terms of the actual user interface
Mm-hmm.
and the tools that we are interacting with that tie in directly with how human beings process information. And so I would love to say, people in mass are going to sort of like figure out how Facebook is tricking them or how Instagram is,
Taking all of our information and data and using it against us.
yeah, and even on the individual biological level, how it's sort of manipulating your cerebral cortex, right? But
My dopamine charges every time I get a like.
just to get a like. See, and I don't think that level of awareness is there in mass to precipitate a shift at present.
Well, to your point, there's always going to be the people sitting around the table who are going to be trying to be one step ahead anyway, right?
Yeah, always. And so, the big part of it is, turn it off. Seriously. Turn it off. I know it's ironic for me to say that on Instagram. But
no one turn this off.
At least we need to take a conscious look at it and make a really specific decision to turn it off, at least for a specific portion of the day.
Yeah, I try and do technology Sabbath.
Yeah.
So one day a week.
Yeah.
Like, just don't look at it.
That is so healthy.
Yeah.
It gives you a totally, much more organic perspective on the world as opposed to being reactive. We're constantly in a reactive state. We're reacting. We're not responding. And I think that's a big part of, that's how political movements get manipulated. It's how marketing and advertising manipulate people. It's one of those things where I've been in technology for almost 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And every single time it's the same thing. Every single time. And so that was a big impetus for the book, right? Mm-hmm. To step away from the machines. That we're, every day we become more and more like them. Every generation we become more and more like them. My daughter, who just left, is quite comfortable with like machines and not engaging with another person. Is just quite comfortable with like doing this action. I'm like, hey, say hi, shake hands, look them in the eye, give them the whole speech, right? But I mean, we're different species now because our brains are used to having, you know, these devices as, you know, an augmented part of our brains. You know, I think in a previous conversation we were talking about how we don't remember phone numbers anymore. How we, you know, certain things we don't do, we don't process anymore, just because we have, you know, our digital auxiliary brains at our disposal. You know.
Yep, in our pockets.
Yeah.
Our brains are now in our asses. Yeah, it's totally true. But and that's interesting because you don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but now that you're saying this, I don't think you have any images in here of people on their phones. Like it's all very specifically like people in contact with other people, right? Or it's people
Yeah.
who are in nature. It's yeah, it's really or like, you know, workers. There's a lot about these that could be, and maybe that's why they feel timeless. Like these could definitely be in, you know, any time between 1950 and 1989 or 90 before we all started having phones. So 2000, right?
Yeah.
So there is no technology in here. Wow,
No.
that's amazing. How
Yeah.
hard was that to fuck? Like how does that even happen that you get this many pictures without a single phone?
Now, definitely, it was happening all around
Oh no,
me.
I found one.
It's just the ability to like, yeah, right. That's the only one.
There's one.
One. But it was happening all around me. It's just one of those things where there was a conscious decision to ignore that. Just because I feel like, you know, there was a study that came out that said that I think 50% of the people who you see walking down the street like this on their phones are not talking to anybody.
Oh my God. Really?
I can't speak to the validity of that, but I'm like, okay, even if they're half wrong and it's 25%, I'm like, what the hell are people doing? Are they just holding this thing to their ear, pretending to talk to somebody? It's weird to me.
I mean, I guess maybe like at best they're listening to music, maybe, but or they're willfully shutting out the world. I mean,
I hope they're talking to somebody. I hope they're listening to something. But otherwise,
God.
it's sort of like now we have to talk about a whole another societal challenge, right? And
yeah.
I think the ultimate question is, who's in our minds? Who is in our ear? And who is getting us to focus on what? You know, we spent the last year, and I assume, based on the conversations I'm listening to, that we will spend the next 4 years debating certain realities about who's legitimate and who's not legitimate and who's doing this and doing that. And I really feel like a lot of that conversation gets motivated by other interests. And I feel like we're in a situation where we really have to ask ourselves, who's asking us to pay attention to things and why? And I hope we sort of elect to be autonomous in what we pay attention to and how we process and interpret information. That's ideally, we have to be able to think for ourselves, and we have to learn empathy as an individual, because I don't think that, you know, contemporary culture really promotes empathy in a meaningful way. There's a real opportunity to not just do symbolic actions, but there's a real opportunity to connect that even from a selfish perspective, empathy is valuable. You know, there's a way to feel better about yourself by paying attention to the needs and concerns of other people.
And all of the, go on, sorry.
No, I'm just gonna say, like, that's super important. That's a lesson that we would all want our kids to know. We all want, you know, our our neighbors to have. You know,
Neighbors.
you want to be able. You mentioned I grew. My grandparents were like farmers. I remember going to their farm and, you know, concerned that they didn't lock the doors at night. But everybody was in the same community, right? I was amazed that my grandfather didn't need to pay somebody to help build his barn, you know? But other people came, all ethnicities, all different types of beliefs, and they came together and they built this. My mother went to one of the Julius Rosenwald schools, those one-room schoolhouses
Yeah.
that the CEO of Sears and Roebuck sort of contributed to. If
Yeah.
the neighborhood raised enough money,
Yep.
there's one of those, a little town called Cairo, Tennessee, and she's a graduate of that. And interesting, it's still there. The schoolhouse is
Because
still there.
they're doing a survey of those schoolhouses. Did you know that?
No.
There's an architectural historian who's traveling around the country surveying all of those schoolhouses and writing up histories on them.
Dude, if he doesn't know about this one, I got one for him.
I'll pass that on. It's a fascinating. I'll send it to you offline. But that's fascinating because it was a whole phenomenon that people don't know about.
Yeah. No, that was like the first prefab buildings. Like some of the first prefab buildings were these schoolhouses. And my grandfather and his community raised the money to buy it. And then he had additional at a discounted rate, of course. And then they built it and it's still there in 2020.
It's so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's sort
Well,
of like,
also that's where the value was, that people knew that there had to be some community commitment to the education of the kids to create this strong society. Oh, where that's gone. Oh my God. But so all of this implies, as I said earlier, like you are using your power for good, because all of this, that's all embedded in these photographs, right? Like the whole project of thinking about what images. I mean, you start off immediately with this sweet girl eating an ice cream cone. Like ice cream is the universal language, right? Like you see people eating ice cream in every country, in every culture.
Yep.
Except China. I think that's the only time I didn't see people eating ice cream. And that's like, you're very intentionally creating that bridge and then opening up that relationship that all of us, you know, regardless of our background or our class or our color, like it's all here in some way.
Yeah.
So like we've all done this. We've all watched the performers. I mean, so you are bringing all of that background in business and advertising and psychology to bear on this photography project.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think that the cover, I think I chose the cover because I think I was watching an interview with a couple of folks, one of whom was one of the very popular member of the street organization known as the Crips. Everyone's heard of the Crips and the Bloods, right? Brother by the name of Big U. And he talked about his introduction to that life. And I feel like one of the things that really gets underexplored is the innocence of Black children and the over-sexualization of Black children. And we're super quick to interpret the Black child as, you know, more mature than they actually are, with more reasoning capability, with more ill intent. And I think it's just super important for all of us to ask these questions, like, what is the what is really happening with these children, you know? And why are we manipulating certain perceptions in a certain direction?
So are you going to move this to like a larger platform? Because that's a re-education of our social services, of our education system. I mean, I saw this in Los Angeles where there were just all of these assumptions placed on these poor, like, and I don't mean like money poor. I mean, just like these poor kids who were like Latinx and Black and brown and Indian. And there was just this expectation that anytime they acted out, it was because it was inherent to who they were, as opposed to thinking like, are they struggling with this math problem? Is there like any other, like white kid who would have been, are you okay? Are you having trouble at home? Or, do you not understand the problem? And so like I kept seeing those assumptions happening over and over. And that's what you're questioning and attacking not attacking, but yeah, attacking in this very proposal. Like these are just kids like any other kid. Think about the fact that they're young and immature and confused and have feelings they don't know what they are and how to control them.
Yeah.
So is no pressure. But so now that you've done like, do you see it as this stepping stone to try and advocate or to help people use it for advocacy in this larger way? It's a whole other field, I know, but okay. Nope. I think you're muted. Okay.
Oh, okay.
What happened?
Back
Oh,
now?
you're back. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I definitely, I think it's sort of baked into the overall message in that optimally, we have to begin as a culture to see people in process and not just as a product. Criminals are not born. Scholars are not born. They're cultivated. And it's these societal processes that we put in place that really determine what we get. So it's sort of like, I get in trouble every time I say this, but if you look at your average, extreme Trump supporter, and you look at your average extreme Democratic supporter, they have a lot in common. They have a lot in common. And I feel like the fact that we're not exploring the process, the socialization, the economics, this multi-variable soup that creates the end product, then we really are blind to the true solution.
Well, we're just perpetuating history.
Yeah, like, people, Republicans. I'm like, Crips, Bloods, Democrats, Republicans. It's the same side, and there's no leeway into process and cultivation of the human spirit. And I feel like that's what matters. I'm not here to debate, what a politician said, because, I heard it said that politics is show business for ugly people. I feel like
I've never heard that.
that's totally legit.
Yeah.
Like, I think we really have to look at beyond the emotional response, getting into the process. As Americans, what are we creating for ourselves? And it's a complicated picture because we have to worry about, history and all these sort of class and all these other variables. But at the end of the day, we are concerned about process. Like America, before it's anything, is an experiment, meaning it's a process, a managed process. And I think in order to get it right, we have to sort of recognize that the damage that some of our bad habits are causing, like the bad habits of white supremacy, cost us trillions of dollars every year. In a city like Atlanta, I'm looking at, every year, and people don't talk about it, but there's like this disparity between rich and poor, even in the same zip code. Like in the same zip code, you'll have certain people making $20,000 and other people making $400,000, literally 20 times difference.
Is this that barbell of Fulton County? Like how it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And like for the past, I think 4 or 5 years, we've been number one in the nation in income disparity. And if you start talking, you're basically talking about the Flintstones and the Jetsons in the same zip code.
Yeah.
What in the world is that going to result in? And if we're not looking at life like the process, if we're not looking at, the consequences of that type of thing, then we're not really trying to solve the problem. And as a lone artist out here in league with other artists and institutions,
Yeah.
what I try to do is just highlight the fact that, okay, there is a unifying factor in all of this. And that unifying factor is our humanity. And that unifying factor is our, recognized or unrecognized connection with one another. Because I think what's happened is if we don't recognize that we have people making $20,000 a year in the same zip code that we're making $400,000 a year, then there's no way that we feel complete, because we send our kids out, they got affluenza, and then the kids that don't have anything because they've not been cultivated appropriately are the ones who are like, they see the things on the TV, they see inequality. They're told that if they don't have, then they're not human.
Yeah.
And that's a massive problem. It's a massive problem. And so we wonder why someone would take a life over a car. A teacher was just murdered last night here in the city.
Oh, God.
In a carjacking.
I'm so sorry.
And largely because, there's this drastic inequality, and there's no sort of formal effort to number one, acknowledge it, and number two, address it. And I feel like that's the hard work that has to be done.
I think the pandemic's made it so much more pronounced too.
Oh, yeah.
And I just don't even, I don't know. I'm hoping everyone's so distracted and hysterical right now with the election that once this is behind us, people will start looking and seeing all the tent cities that are blooming all over the cities.
Yeah.
I mean, in Charlotte, I haven't seen it this bad since I lived in Los Angeles. I shouldn't say bad, this desperate since I lived in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And it's extraordinary. It's getting cold. People are getting sicker. I mean, it's not helpful for anyone to leave that alone. And I don't think people realize, like with the schools, like what we were just talking about, like building that Sears one-room schoolhouse for the community. Like the community is only as strong as its lowest level, right? Like that's your foundation. You need to make sure everything is buttressed in order to have a strong society. And that's across all platforms: health, safety, school, security. It's just, I don't know. Hopefully we'll get back to that. But let's turn it all around. Because this is getting really depressing. And we're almost at the end of our time. But on an up note, honest to goodness though, like this project, like your photograph being, as I said, like being on the front of the museum, the book, like I really do think that it's bringing a whole other group of people into the museum. And there are a lot of things that we're doing at the Mint. It's, it's not just your photograph, but that is like the first thing people see walking down the street. And I think it is bringing all of these different people into the space together and creating this equalizing experience. Not only so like, you know, the wealthy white people who used to always go to the museums in cities like Charlotte see all of the people that are also in their city, but also it allows all of those young people, and I mean like all young people, not just isn't based on class or color, but just like to have young people and people in their 20s realize like this culture is available for them too. It's equalizing access to those spaces. And I think that's where your project goes, and all art projects go beyond just a visual art experience and become this social effect, right? Like that's where it becomes a lot more effective for social change.
Which, I mean, it's interesting, like the whole pandemic thing and the sort of redefining of that whole thing is like, it's happening in real time around us, right?
Wait, redefining of what? Because you got cut off right when you said that. Redefining of what a museum is, redefining of what a gallery is, and where it exists in space and time is like, it's like that's happening right now. It's now on your phone.
Right.
It's on your computer.
What I've learned about the Mint in some of the things that you folks are doing is like super cool, because it's extending the museum outside of the four walls of the building. It's not about the building, it's about the culture. And again, it goes to what I really believe in, is that we're looking at people in process. We're looking at people who are, you know, who have a you know, a certain cultural reality, and giving them something that's culturally relevant to latch on to and make them part of the conversation is like super important.
Yeah, I'm hoping that really is what comes out of this whole experience, the pandemic, the like reckoning with systemic racial injustice, the election, like all of this, like what we get on the other side across the world is just like this more open cultural experience, just like people appreciating what they have on their street, like, you know, the mural on their street, the advertisement that's on their billboard. I mean, we saw that after the Depression. WPA really helped make that happen by bringing thoughtful visual images onto the street, by employing artists to do that. And I don't know, I'm just hoping that's something that comes out of this, to bring that more equal attention to what importance visual culture can play. Who knows?
It's like a mix, right? It's like we need that representation, but we also need we got to put dollars in pockets at the same time. So,
Ken,
you know, because the landlord does not accept representation as payment.
He won't accept a picture? What?
He will not accept a photograph. I've tried to pay my landlord with photographs. No.
Dude, I get paid in art all the time. You need to select your people better.
How about that? If I could, I would, but I can't.
I don't know. I think you should try this. Think of all like those people who you hear like, well, I rented my apartment to Picasso and he paid me in napkin drawings every month, and now I'm a billionaire.
Nope. Landlord only wants Federal Reserve notes is all they accept.
Damn it. Give him a book. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up. If you joined late, Dr. Keith Cradle, because I see you did just join late. This is going to be on our website because I am going to save it, and Sadie Munn is going to generously upload it to the Mint website, and people can come and see it and hear it. But I'm going to show it again. Keith, Ken West's beautiful book, The Beauty of Everyday Things. You can get it. I know you can get it at the Mint shop, everyone on here may not live in Charlotte, so you can also order it, Ken.
Yes.
Okay, from Amazon, like from the regular.
No, not on Amazon. You have
How
to
do
go
you
to
get it?
tboet.com.
But you can just Google Ken West and the beauty of everyday things,
No,
and it'll come
if
up.
you Google Ken West, you're gonna get an engineer in like North Dakota.
Really? Oh
I'm
my
gonna talk to him about
God.
the same thing. Not likely, but we'll see.
God. Okay, so I'm gonna put something on the website. I think we actually have it on our website, but I'll make sure that we do some sort of link as well. If we can't link to the bookshop, then when we post the Instagram post, I'll just email me what the link is, and I'll make sure that it's on the page. But again, Ken's photograph, Black Boys Cry, is on view in the Mint Museum through January. It's in their current exhibition. And then when that show closes, we will find some place to put it on view. I promise, as soon as I can eke out a space in the Contemporary Permanent Galleries, because we are now proud owners of the photograph. And as I said last week, I can't wait to figure out our next project together. I love talking to you. I love following your mind. And the next time we talk, I'll have read Thinking Fast and Slow, and I'll be ready.
That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Ken. It
Really
was
do
great
appreciate
seeing
it. I
you.
appreciate everything that you and the Mint are doing, not just through support of the book and me, but just in general. I really feel like from a cultural perspective, you guys are taking a strong step forward, and it's really appreciated.
Thank you. I mean, that means a lot, but it's easy when we're working with such powerful work like you make. So thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.